The Yes But Technique. How Negotiators Win by Nathaniel Crane. Published by Audiobooks HUB. Introduction. Negotiation is often seen as a battlefield. Two sides, opposing interests, and a winner at the end. But the most skilled negotiators rarely think in terms of war. Instead, they treat negotiation as a dance, a rhythm of give and take, of listening and nudging, of knowing when to lean in and when to pull back. And at the heart of this subtle dance lies one of the most underestimated techniques in human communication, the yes, but strategy. You've heard it 1,000 times. Yes, but it seems so simple, even dismissive. Yet in the hands of a trained negotiator, these two little words carry the power to redirect conversations, maintain rapport, and slowly shift power. This book is about understanding why it works, how it works, and how you can master it. Not only in business or politics, but in everyday life. The yes, but technique isn't about manipulation in the negative sense. It's about maintaining agreement while changing direction. It acknowledges the other person's perspective, yes, while simultaneously introducing your own agenda, but when done right, it keeps people from becoming defensive. It lowers resistance. It allows you to reshape conversations without triggering a fight. Most people misunderstand this technique. They use yes, but as a blunt tool, a way to dismiss ideas with a false nod of agreement. But when used with finesse, tone, and timing, it becomes a scalpel in the surgeon's hand. It becomes a bridge between confrontation and cooperation. I remember sitting across from a seasoned negotiator during a workshop in Berlin. He was quiet, understated, even charming. He never raised his voice. But in each role play, he kept winning. No matter how strong the position of the other side, he would nod, smile, say yes, and then gently push things in another direction with a single word. But it was fascinating to watch. People didn't even realize they were conceding until the deal was done. Afterward, I asked him what his secret was. He said, "People hate feeling wrong. They hate being told no. So I never say no. I say yes, and then I move them." That was the moment the light bulb went off for me. Yes, but wasn't just a phrase. It was a technique, an approach, a mindset. This book is not about theory alone. Each chapter will take you deeper into the strategic and psychological aspects of yes, but illustrated with real-world examples from business deals, hostage negotiations, diplomatic conflicts, and even family arguments. You'll learn how this technique can disarm opposition, create momentum, and give you an edge while still preserving relationships. We'll start with the psychology behind resistance and how agreement works to disarm it. Then we'll look at the anatomy of a yes but statement, how to craft one, when to use it, and when to avoid it. We'll also explore advanced variations, like using silence with yes but, or stacking multiple yes but pivots in a single conversation. Finally, we'll look at ethical considerations, because power without responsibility is dangerous. Let's be clear. Yes, but is not a magical phrase that makes people obey. It's not a trick or a script. It's a lens. Once you begin to see how it works, you start to recognize its fingerprints everywhere. In boardrooms, courtrooms, interviews, and negotiations. You'll even see it in the way great parents talk to their kids or how coaches steer their athletes. In a world increasingly polarized by black and white thinking, the yes, but approach offers a powerful middle path. It says, "I hear you, I understand you, and here's something else to consider." In an age of echo chambers and emotional outbursts, that kind of conversation is not just powerful, it's rare. As you read this book, I challenge you to notice the moments in your life where you default to confrontation or avoidance. Start paying attention to how often people push instead of pivot. How many arguments could have been softened with a simple yes but? How many relationships strained by resistance could have been steered with a small verbal adjustment? The best negotiators don't win by overpowering the other side. They win by staying in sync, by listening more than they speak, by agreeing just enough to keep moving forward. They use yes as a tool of alignment but as a lever of change. By the end of this book, you'll be able to do the same. Ready? Let's start. Chapter 1. Walk into any negotiation, and you'll quickly find out that logic is enough. You can present all the facts, the numbers, the charts, and still get a cold, polite no. Why? Because humans aren't rational creatures. We're emotional. We want to be heard, respected, and validated before we're willing to budge. This is why the yes but technique works. It doesn't fight resistance, it redirects it. At the core of every negotiation is one silent question. Do you understand me? Not just my position, but me, my fears, my priorities, my motivations. And most people answer this question poorly. They rush to correct, to push their agenda, to win. But people don't move when they feel pushed. They move when they feel safe. Imagine someone says to you, "Your idea is interesting, but I think this other way is better." How do you feel? Probably dismissed, even insulted. Now change just a few words. Yes, your idea brings up an important point, but what if we build on it this way? Suddenly, it feels different. You're being acknowledged. The conversation becomes collaborative, not combative. This is the essence of the yes, but technique. Agree with the person before redirecting them. The agreement doesn't have to be full or enthusiastic. It just has to be enough to lower their defenses. It's a strategic pause before steering the conversation in a different direction. Let's break it down. The yes does three things. First, it signals that you're listening. In a world full of talkers, listeners are rare and valuable. Second, it shows respect. Even if you disagree, you're not dismissing the other person outright. Third, it creates a small moment of psychological alignment. This is powerful. Agreement, even partial, creates a sense of we, and people negotiate differently with those they see as allies. Now comes the pivot, the but. Here's where the magic happens, and also where most people go wrong. The but must introduce something new without sounding like a rejection. This requires tone, timing, and often subtle language. The goal is to reframe the conversation without erasing what came before. Think of it like taking a conversation off one track and gently place it onto another. For example, in a salary negotiation, employee, "I believe I deserve a raise because I've taken on more responsibilities." Manager, weak response, "I understand, but we can't offer raises right now." Manager, stronger response using the technique. "Yes, you've definitely taken on more and that's been noticed, but we're in a budget freeze this quarter. That said, let's talk about how we can position you for a raise when the new budget opens." Notice what happened? The manager didn't lie, didn't cave in, and didn't trigger a fight. The yes created rapport, the but introduced constraint, and the follow-up opened constructive path forward. It's not about saying yes, but literally. It's about doing yes, but in tone, in structure, in intention. Of course, some people ask, isn't this manipulative? Only if used with bad intent. Like any tool, it depends on the user. A scalpel can save a life or take one. The yes, but technique is powerful because it honors emotion and redirects logic. When used ethically, it helps people find common ground. When abused, it becomes a slick way to pretend to agree while undermining someone's point. The difference is in your purpose. One reason this technique is so powerful is because of something called reactance. Reactance is a psychological response triggered when people feel their freedom is being limited. Tell someone you must, and they instantly want to rebel. Tell them you might consider, and they're more open. The yes, but Technique works precisely because it feels like a gentle suggestion, not a command. It lowers reactance. It keeps people open, not defensive. Another reason it works is because of the human need for consistency. Once people feel they've been heard and respected, they're more willing to be consistent with the person who provided that feeling. You're not trying to win against them. You're guiding them to win with you. Consider a customer negotiation. Customer: your prices are too high compared to competitors. Salesperson: defensive: well, we offer better quality, so it's worth it. Salesperson: strategic: yes, some competitors do offer lower prices, but when it comes to long-term savings, our durability means fewer replacements and less downtime. Again, it's not about denying the customer's concern. It's about acknowledging it and then reframing the value proposition. The customer feels heard. The objection isn't crushed. It's redirected. The irony is that people often confuse "but" with conflict in most casual conversations, but comes right after false agreement. Yes, but you're wrong. So we're trained to brace for disagreement. That's why the yes, but technique must be delivered with care. The yes must feel sincere, not sarcastic. And the but must lead somewhere productive, not adversarial. Tone matters. Delivery matters. But most of all, intention matters. When you use yes, but to build instead of block, people notice. One final point for this chapter. Sometimes the best yes, but doesn't even include the word but. You can substitute with "and at the same time." Have you considered? Or what if we also looked at the spirit of the technique is what matters, not the literal phrase. What matters is that you acknowledge, then pivot. In upcoming chapters, we'll dive deeper into how to construct yes, but statements tailored for different scenarios, business deals, personal disputes, even crisis negotiations. But for now, start practicing the basics. Listen carefully. Agree genuinely, and then redirect with purpose. You don't need to overpower people. You just need to guide them gently toward a new perspective. That's how negotiators win. Chapter 2. Before you can master the yes, but technique, you need to understand what you're up against. Resistance. Resistance is the invisible wall that appears the moment someone feels pressured, judged, or contradicted. It can take many forms: defensiveness, silence, sarcasm, withdrawal. But the root is always the same. People want to protect their sense of autonomy and self-worth. This chapter is about the psychology behind resistance, why it shows up, how it behaves, and why simply pushing harder almost always backfires. Let's start with a simple truth. People don't like being told what to do, even when the advice is good. Even when the facts are solid. If the delivery feels forceful or dismissive, the reaction is often negative. This is known as psychological reactance, an emotional response that occurs when someone perceives their freedom of choice is being threatened. You probably experienced this yourself. Someone tells you, "You have to do this," and your immediate thought is, "No, I don't." You may even want to do the thing, but now you resist just to assert your independence. It's not logic driving you. It's emotion. Reactance is hardwired into us. It's a defense mechanism, and it activates fast. Now, here's the twist. Most people trigger reactance without realizing it. They go into negotiations with facts, arguments, even good intentions, but they come across as confrontational. They say, "Here's why you're wrong," or "This is what needs to happen," and the wall goes up. It doesn't matter how right they are. Once resistance is active, it's hard to make progress. This is where yes, but comes in, not as a clever phrase, but as a counter-resistance tool. Think of resistance like a locked door. You can try to force it open, but you will likely damage the relationship. Or you can use the right key. Yes is that key. It tells the other person, "I see you, I hear you. You're not crazy or wrong for feeling that way." And when people feel seen and heard, the lock begins to loosen. The wall starts to come down. Let's consider a real-world example. A parent wants their teenager to spend less time on their phone and more time on homework. Here's the common approach. Parent, you're always on your phone. You need to focus more. Put it away. Teenager, eye roll, silence, maybe an argument. Now try the yes but approach. Parent, yes, I get that your phone helps you stay connected with your friends, and that's important. But I also see that your homework is piling up, and I know that's going to stress you out later. What happened here? The parent acknowledged the teen's reality instead of dismissing it. That small yes created a moment of empathy. But then introduce a new concern without sounding like an attack. The teen may still grumble, but resistance will be lower. Now, let's talk about a more formal scenario, a business meeting. Imagine a team leader proposes a new direction, and a senior colleague immediately disagrees. Senior colleague, I don't think this plan is realistic given our current budget. Team leader, defensive, well, we have no other choice. We have to make it work. Team leader, strategic, yes, the budget is definitely tight. But that's also why this approach could help. We'd be reallocating resources rather than increasing costs. See the shift? The second response didn't deny the concern. It joined it briefly and then steered toward a new frame. This creates what psychologists call a moment of shared reality. When people feel like you're on their side, they're more open to your ideas, even if those ideas contradict their initial view. Another important psychological factor is confirmation bias, our tendency to seek out information that supports what we already believe. If you tell someone they're wrong, you don't just trigger resistance, you challenge their identity. That's dangerous ground. But if you affirm part of their belief first, they're more likely to listen to what comes next. Let's say you're negotiating with someone who has a strong opinion about how a project should be handled. You disagree, but you don't want to alienate them. Option 1, bad. I think your plan is flawed. Mine is better. Option 2, better. Yes, your plan clearly addresses the speed of delivery, which is important. But I'm wondering how we handle the risk exposure if we move that fast. In option 2, you're validating their concern. Speed, while redirecting the conversation to risk. You're not attacking. You're expanding the frame. This is a quiet power of yes, but it's not about winning arguments. It's about shaping conversations. But make no mistake, this is not a passive approach. It requires emotional intelligence, patience, and precision. You must listen deeply to what the other person values. You must find the common ground, however small, and stand on it. Then, and only then, can you introduce your pivot. Sometimes people ask, what if I don't agree at all? What if there's nothing I can say yes to? The answer is, look harder. There's almost always something you can affirm. You don't have to agree with their conclusion, but you can acknowledge their intention, their effort, their concern, their emotional state. Even saying, yes, I see how this is frustrating for you, can make a difference. Empathy is the first step in influence. One more critical insight. The yes, but technique works best when delivered calmly. If your voice rises, if your body tenses, the words won't matter. People don't just hear what you say, they feel how you say it. So slow down, breathe, make the yes genuine, make the but gentle. In summary, resistance is normal. It's human, but it's not a wall you have to crash through. With the right mindset and the right language, you can lower resistance, create connection, and move the conversation forward. Yes, but is your entry point. Chapter 3. Now that you understand psychology behind resistance and how the yes, but technique helps lower it, it's time to learn how to craft a powerful yes, but statement. This isn't about saying those exact words every time. In fact, sometimes it's better if you don't. What matters is the structure, the acknowledgement, the pivot, and the redirection. It's a dance. Done well, it feels natural, like part of the flow. Done poorly, it sounds forced, robotic, or manipulative. Let's break it down. Every effective yes, but has three invisible components. Validation, showing you heard and understood the other person's point. Transition, gently shifting the focus. Reframe, presenting a new idea or direction in a non-threatening way. It starts with validation. This is the yes part, and it's often the hardest. Most people are so focused on what they want to say next that they fail to truly listen. But validation is not the same as agreement. You don't have to say, "You're absolutely right." Instead, you say, "That makes sense from your perspective," or "I see where you're coming from," or even, "That's a good point to consider." The goal is to acknowledge that the other person's thoughts or feelings are legitimate, even if you don't fully share them. Let's look at a poor example first. Manager, we need to increase productivity by 15% this quarter. Employee, that's impossible. We're already stretched thin. Now, the manager might be tempted to say, "Well, you're just going to have to work harder." That's not validation. That's dismissal. Instead, a better yes would be, "Yes, I know the team is already under pressure, and I hear your concern." That sentence alone creates a pause. It slows the escalation. The employee feels seen. Next comes a transition, the moment you pivot the conversation. Here, you move from validation toward your message. The key here is tone. You want to sound collaborative, not confrontational. Instead of using but in a harsh or oppositional way, use softer phrases like "and at the same time, however," or even "let's consider." Continuing the example. "Yes, I know the team is already under pressure, and I hear your concern. At the same time, we've been given a goal that we can't ignore." You haven't rejected the concern. You've added a layer to it. Now, both realities exist in the conversation. Finally, the reframe. This is your chance to present your idea, solution, or proposal in a way that builds on what's already been said, not against it. So let's sit down together and find ways we can work smarter, maybe by streamlining certain tasks or reassigning priorities. Now you validate a concern, acknowledge external pressure, and invited collaboration. That's how effective, yes, but works. It doesn't override. It invites. It reframes the problem as something you can solve together. Let's look at a few more examples across different settings. Sales scenario. Customer, your price is too high. Poor response. That's our standard rate. Better response. Yes, I understand that price is an important factor for you. At the same time, many of our clients have found that the long-term savings from quality and durability more than justify the upfront investment. Notice how the word "yes" didn't mean agreement on the price being too high. Acknowledge that price matters. That's all you need. Team conflict. Colleague, I don't think your plan makes sense. It's too risky. Poor response. You're overreacting. Better response. Yes, you're right to be cautious. We can't afford unnecessary risk. That's why I've included a backup plan to mitigate any downside. Again, you validate the concern without surrendering your position. You redirect without aggression. One powerful trick in constructing yes, but statements is to borrow the other person's language. If they say, "I'm worried about quality," your validation starts with, "Yes, quality is a valid concern." This shows you're listening. People soften when they hear their own words reflected back. It's also important to avoid common traps. Don't fake agreement. People can sense when you're just nodding to move on. Don't delay too long. If your validation drags, it may seem like you're pandering. Don't skip the pivot. A good yes must be followed by meaningful, but, or else you just agreed and surrendered the frame. Some people ask, why not just agree and leave it at that? And the answer is, in negotiation, you rarely want to agree without moving the conversation. Your goal isn't just harmony, it's progress. The power of yes, but is that it maintains harmony while moving the conversation toward your goals. Another key element in a successful yes, but is emotional control. If you sound irritated, sarcastic, or passive-aggressive, it ruins the effect. The technique only works when it's rooted in genuine calm and clarity. This is why the best negotiators often seem serene. Even in high-stress situations, they're not just controlling the words, they're controlling the emotional tone of the room. A final tip, practice this out loud. It's not enough to understand the structure intellectually. You need to feel how it sounds, how it flows. Role play, take past conversations, and rewrite them using this technique. You'll be amazed how different the tone becomes when you simply change how you acknowledge and redirect. The structure may feel awkward at first, but over time, it becomes second nature. You'll begin to spot the right moments to insert it. When tension rises, when someone digs in, when the air gets thick with resistance. You'll use it to ease the tension, redirect the energy, and get people moving again, often without them even realizing what changed. Chapter 4. High-stakes negotiations are pressure cookers. Emotions are elevated. Time is limited. Reputations are on the line. And the outcome can mean success or failure. In these environments, every word matters. And that's exactly where the yes, but technique becomes not just helpful, but essential. In high-stakes settings, the most dangerous thing isn't the other side's aggression. It's your own reaction to it. When people feel threatened, their natural response is to fight, flee, or freeze. In negotiation, this often shows up as counterattacks, giving in too quickly, or becoming rigid and unresponsive. The yes, but approach helps you do something different, absorb the pressure without collapsing under it, and then pivot the energy in a new direction. Let's look at a real scenario. You're in a multi-million-dollar business deal. The other side just said, "This offer is insulting. We expected a serious proposal, not this lowball figure." Your instinct might be to defend yourself. This isn't a lowball. It's a fair offer based on the data. But pause. That response only escalates. It tells them they're wrong and puts them on the defensive. Instead, here's a composed yes, but response. Yes, I can see why this initial figure might feel underwhelming based on your expectations. But it's also based on where the market has shifted in the last quarter. And our goal is to find a structure that reflects those new realities while keeping your interests front and center. You haven't caved. You haven't apologized. What you've done is acknowledge the emotion, provide a rationale, and invite a forward-looking dialogue. You're saying, "I hear you, and I still believe there's a productive path forward." High-stakes negotiations require what I call confident empathy. Weak empathy sounds like pleading, "I understand, please don't be mad." But confident empathy sounds like strength with softness. "Yes, I hear you, and I'm still here to solve this with you." That's where the real magic of yes, but comes alive. It's not appeasement. It's redirection with respect. Another important factor in these moments is emotional framing. In tense conversations, people don't just hear facts. They feel the energy behind them. If you let the other person's heat determine your tone, you've lost control. Instead, you set the tone. Yes, but gives you a framework for calm leadership, even when the room feels like a storm. Here's another high-stakes example from a job negotiation. Candidate: "I'm disappointed by the compensation. It's lower than I expected from my experience." Bad response from the employer: "Well, that's what we offer. Take it or leave it." Better response: "Yes, Your experience is impressive, and I can understand why this offer might feel a bit under your expectations. But we're also constrained by internal equity standards. That said, we're open to discussing performance-based bonuses or growth milestones that could bridge that gap. Notice the rhythm. First, affirmation. Your experience is impressive. Then acknowledgement. This might feel under your expectations. Then the pivot. We're constrained. And finally, a solution. We're open to bonuses. This technique lowers the chance of rupture and raises a chance of collaboration. That's the essence of high-stakes negotiation, reducing the emotional temperature so reason can re-enter the room. In many tough conversations, people arrive with a rigid position. They say, "This is non-negotiable," or "We will not move from this." If you respond with a counter-demand, you've set up a power struggle. Instead, try something like this. "Yes, I understand this issue is a firm line for you, and I respect how clearly you communicated that. But I wonder if there's any flexibility in how that line is applied in different circumstances, particularly when both sides have strong interests at stake." You're not challenging their authority. You're gently testing the edge of their rigidity. Sometimes just that phrasing, "I wonder if," is enough to open a door. This leads us to an important nuance. Soft language doesn't mean weak outcomes. Great negotiators don't bulldoze. They finesse. They use language like a scalpel, not a hammer. The more high pressure the moment, the more deliberate your words must be. A common mistake people make in high-stakes talks is fearing silence. They rush to fill the space, talk too fast, or over-explain. But silence is part of the strategy. After a strong "yes, but" statement, leave room for the other person to process. Let the words settle. Don't jump in to defend or justify. This quiet confidence makes you look strong, even when you're conceding something. Also, remember this. In high-stakes settings, egos are louder. People want to feel respected, important, influential. "Yes, but" gives them that feeling. It says, "You matter. Your view matters." But let's also look at this other dimension. It protects their identity while gently challenging their position. Let's say you're a consultant negotiating a scope of work. The client says, "We need you to do twice the work for the same price." Option A, that's unreasonable. No way. Option B, yes, I see how it might seem efficient to group more tasks under the same budget, especially when deadlines are tight. But adding this scope would double the hours and resources required. What I'd like to propose instead is a phased approach that keeps costs controlled while still meeting the goals. Option B is persuasive not because it's polite, but because it's smart. It acknowledges the client's pressures, explains the cost of the ask, and offers a constructive path forward. That's influence without conflict. One final tactic. Mirror the pace of the conversation, then slow it down. When the other person is heated, begin by matching their intensity, but briefly, and then bring it down with your tone, your breathing, and your words. For example, "Yes, I can hear how important this is to you, and I'm not taking that lightly. But if we rush this decision now, we might both regret it. Let's take a beat and look at it from all sides." You're not denying their urgency. You're respecting it and guiding it toward wisdom. High-stakes negotiations test your patience, your nerves, and your skill. The "yes, but" technique won't make the stress disappear, but it will give you control in moments where control feels lost. And that can make the difference between a broken deal and a breakthrough. Chapter 5. Every negotiation is, at its core, a conversation between human beings. And not all humans are wired the same. Some people need facts. Some need to feel in control. Others want to be heard more than they want to win. This is why understanding personality types and adapting your delivery to them is crucial for applying the "yes, but" technique effectively. Let's be clear. The structure of "yes, but" doesn't change. You still acknowledge, pivot, and reframe. but how you deliver each part needs to align with the personality sitting across from you. Let's start with the dominant type, the high-control negotiator. These are the people who walk into the room trying to establish power. They talk fast, make bold statements, and expect quick results. If you hesitate, they see it as weakness. If you challenge them directly, they double down. With dominant types, your yes must be fast and assertive. They don't want to lecture, they want clarity. For example, yes, I understand you're looking for a strong return and a fast timeline. Your voice should be calm but firm. But should not feel like opposition, but like redirection toward an even better outcome. But the fastest route might expose us to risk. I propose a hybrid timeline that protects the return and keeps your leadership reputation strong. See what happened? You didn't say they were wrong. You said there's a smarter way to achieve their goal, and you framed it as protecting them. Now, compare that to the analytical type. This person wants logic, numbers, frameworks. They distrust emotion and vague promises. With them, your yes needs to echo their data-driven mindset. Yes, based on your metrics. That approach could yield results in the short term. Then pivot with evidence. But if we look at the 3-year trend data, there's a clear pattern showing that a phased strategy produces more sustainable ROI. Here, tone is important, neutral, measured, clear. The analytical type needs to believe you're speaking their language, not try to sell them something emotional. Then there's a relational type, the people-first negotiator. They care about trust, harmony, and how decisions affect others. With them, your yes needs to feel emotionally grounded. Yes, I completely understand why this change might worry the team. They've been through a lot lately. Then, the pivot must include reassurance. But that's exactly why we need a thoughtful transition plan, so they feel supported, not blindsided. Your tone here should be warm, steady, and calm. For relational types, how you say things matters just as much as what you say. And finally, the cautious/resistant type. These are the skeptics, the ones who look for hidden motives. They might resist even reasonable proposals because they don't trust the process. With them, transparency is key. Your yes needs to disarm. Yes, I get that you might wonder what the catch is, especially after what happened last time. Then pivot honestly. But here's exactly how we structure this offer. No tricks, no hidden terms, just a clean proposal we can walk through together. This kind of straight talk earns trust. When people feel you're being real with them, they lower their guard. Now, let's consider a common mistake. Treating everyone the same. Imagine you use a soft, empathetic yes, but with a dominant type. They'll bulldoze you. Or you use a fast, results-focused tone with a relational type. They'll think you don't care. One size does not fit all. Great negotiators are great observers. They read the room, not just the words, but the posture, tone, and emotional energy. So how do you quickly spot someone's style? Dominant types interrupt often, focus on outcomes, and speak in statements. Analytical types ask lots of questions, take notes, and avoid emotion. Relational types make eye contact, ask how others feel, and seek consensus. Cautious types hesitate, focus on what might go wrong, and need time to trust. Once you spot it, adjust, mirror their pace, use their language, match their priorities. Then deliver your yes, but through that lens. Let's try a few quick sketches. Dominant executive. Yes, you want results fast. But steamrolling the process could cost us talent and goodwill. Let's do fast and smart. Analytical partner. Yes, your forecast lines up with industry averages. But this one variable changes the risk profile. Let's run a model with that factored in. Relational team lead. Yes, it's a tough change. But with the right support structure, we can make this feel like a win for everyone. Cautious client. Yes, you've been burned before. But here's what's different this time, and how we're protecting you. Notice how each message is built on the same structure, but tailored in tone and intent. There's also an internal benefit to this approach. When you focus on the other person's style, you take pressure off yourself. You're not just trying to win. You're studying, adapting, co-creating. That's where real persuasion lives, not in domination, but in understanding. And here's a final insight. Sometimes people switch styles under stress. A relational person might become abrupt if they feel cornered. An analytical person might suddenly get emotional if they sense betrayal. Watch the shift. When it happens, pause, reset, and respond to new emotional reality. The most skilled negotiators have a wide emotional range. They're not locked into one mode. They can be analytical or empathetic, assertive or quiet, whatever the situation demands. Yes, but is simply the chassis. The engine is your ability to adapt. Chapter 6. Negotiation becomes exponentially more complex when there are more people at the table. In one-on-one conversations, you're navigating a single perspective, but in group negotiations, you're often managing conflicting agendas, shifting alliances and invisible hierarchies. The yes, but technique must evolve to handle not just what's being said, but who's saying it and how others in the room are responding. Let's start with the reality. Group dynamics are messy. Sometimes the loudest person isn't the decision maker. Sometimes someone remains silent until the end, then drops a bomb that changes everything. Sometimes people posture in front of their colleagues to save face. If you come in with a one-size-fits-all message, you'll be blindsided. You need to read the room like a living system. The key is to understand that yes, but in group settings is not just a phrase. It's a strategy of positioning. You're not just responding to one idea. You're often bridging between several. And that means your acknowledgement needs to be broader, more inclusive, while your pivot must still move the conversation toward clarity. Let's say you're leading a pitch meeting. 3 executives are in the room. One is enthusiastic. One is skeptical. One is distracted and quiet. The enthusiastic one says, "I love this approach. It's bold and different." The skeptical one replies, "Bold isn't always good. We have to be careful with risk." Here's how a skilled negotiator might respond. Yes, I really appreciate both perspectives. The enthusiasm shows we're tapping into something exciting, and the concern about risk is absolutely valid, especially in a market this volatile. But what we're proposing balances both. Innovation with a built-in safeguard strategy. You didn't take sides. You build a bridge, and you use the group tension to advance your position. That's how you win without alienating. One of the most powerful uses of yes, but in a group is synthesizing disagreement. When 2 parties express opposing views, you don't choose, you integrate. Here's another example. Let's say you're part of a nonprofit board discussing whether to expand into a new region. One board member says, "We should act fast. The need is urgent." Another says, "We're not ready. We don't have the infrastructure." You can respond like this. Yes, the urgency is real, and the concern about our current capacity is just as real. But maybe there's a middle ground. A pilot program that lets us respond quickly while testing our systems before scaling fully. This is not fence-sitting. It's leadership. You've acknowledged both truths, then reframe the issue as a question of sequencing, not ideology. That changes the game. Now, let's talk about power dynamics. In groups, not everyone has equal weight. Sometimes the most junior person has the key technical insight, but they won't speak unless invited. Sometimes the highest ranking person dominates, but needs help saving face if their idea isn't accepted. Yes, but gives you a subtle way to manage these layers. Here's an example with a dominant leader and a junior analyst. The leader says, "We've always done it this way. No need to complicate things." The analyst hesitantly suggests, actually, the data we collected shows a significant drop in efficiency with that model. You might step in, yes, the current model has served us well for years, and that consistency has been part of our strength. But the new data that Alex brought in points to a shift we can't ignore. What if we looked at how to evolve the model without losing what's worked? You respected the leader, elevated the analyst, and moved the group forward, all in one breath. That's the art of it. Another challenge in group settings is when conflict gets personal. Maybe someone rolls their eyes, dismisses a colleague's point, or raises their voice. The room tightens. The energy shifts. At that moment, the content becomes secondary. What matters most is restoring safety. You can say, yes, there are clearly strong opinions here, which shows how much everyone cares about the outcome. But I want to make sure we're hearing each voice fully, because tension can be a signal that we're on the edge of a breakthrough, not a breakdown. You're not scolding, you're reframing, and you're inviting the group back into dialogue, not drama. Here's another tip. Sometimes your yes in a group needs to be nonverbal. A nod to the quiet participant. Eye contact with the one who just got interrupted. A pause before answering, to show you're actually considering what was said. These gestures say, you're seen. That subtle acknowledgement builds trust. And then but can be even more effective, because people don't resist a redirection if they feel respected first. There's also a unique opportunity in group negotiation. You can amplify voices to steer momentum. If someone says something that supports your position, even faintly catch it. For example, that's a great point, Jamie. You mentioned we need a solution that's sustainable. Yes, and that's exactly what this proposal is built for. But we'll need full alignment to make it work, especially across operations and finance. By naming and reinforcing supportive voices, you start building a coalition within the group. You're not just persuading individuals. You're shaping a shared direction. Lastly, be aware of timing. In groups, everything moves slower. Decisions take longer. You may not get the final word. But gives you something powerful, the ability to leave a clear impression. Even if a decision isn't made in the room, people will remember how you framed the conversation. That means your goal isn't always to win right away. Sometimes it's to tilt the conversation, so that by the time people reflect or debrief later, your perspective has become the most reasonable path forward. Group negotiations are never clean, but they offer something individual conversations can't. The chance to influence a collective mind. And yes, but is your tool for doing just that without confrontation, without ego, and without losing your message in the noise. Chapter 7. Some of the most challenging negotiations don't happen in boardrooms or business meetings. They happen in living rooms, across dinner tables, or behind closed doors between people who care deeply about each other. In these moments, logic takes a back seat. Emotions drive the conversation. And that's where the yes, but technique becomes less about persuasion and more about preservation. In emotionally charged conversations, the stakes feel personal. You're not just debating terms. You're navigating values, identity, hurt, hope. A misstep here can fracture trust. But if used thoughtfully, yes, but can de-escalate tension, show empathy, and gently guide the conversation back to clarity. Let's begin with the fundamental shift. In emotional negotiations, your goal is connection, not correction. People in an emotional state don't want to be fixed. They want to be seen. They want their feelings validated. That means your yes must do more than acknowledge. It must absorb. Suppose your partner says, "You never listen to me. Every time I try to explain how I feel, you shut me down." The instinct might be to defend yourself, but that only escalates the cycle. A skilled yes, but response might sound like, "Yes, I hear that you're feeling dismissed. And I can see how frustrating that must be, especially when you're opening up. But I truly want to understand you better. And if I fail at that, I want to do better. Notice, the yes doesn't just agree. It mirrors the emotion. The but isn't defensive. It's a pivot toward repair. In emotionally tense moments, tone is everything. A calm, steady voice signals safety. If your words are kind but your tone is sharp or sarcastic, the message won't land. People don't just hear what you say, they feel how you say it. Let's look at another example. Say, between a parent and teenager. Teen, you don't trust me. You're always checking up on where I am. Parent, yes, I know it feels like I'm hovering, and that must be annoying, especially as you're trying to gain independence. But I trust you. It's the world I don't always trust. My job is to keep you safe, even when it makes me unpopular. This is not just a deflection. It's a layering of empathy with perspective. You validated their frustration and explained your intention without backing down from your responsibility. The emotional yes, but often follows a rhythm. Acknowledge the feeling, not just the words. Go beneath them. Name your intention. Make it clear you're not attacking, you're engaging. Offer a constructive path. Something forward-looking, not backward-blaming. In couples, this is especially vital. Romantic relationships live and die on emotional safety. A partner says, I feel like I'm not a priority anymore. That's not an invitation to argue the calendar. It's an invitation to listen for pain. Yes, I've been buried in work, and I haven't shown up the way you need. But I care more than ever, and I want us to reset together. It's simple, but it takes courage to say it without ego. Of course, emotional negotiations aren't just about personal relationships. They also show up in professional environments. When layoffs happen, when people feel overlooked, when feedback lands poorly. Leaders who know how to say yes, but with emotional intelligence can hold space for disappointment without caving to it. Imagine you're a manager giving difficult feedback. Your team member says, I feel like nothing I do is ever good enough. You can respond, yes, I can see why it feels that way, especially after how hard you worked. And I want to acknowledge that effort. But I also have a responsibility to help you grow, even when the conversation is uncomfortable. You're not denying their feelings. You're honoring them and still holding the standard. One of the most powerful uses of yes, but is with people who are angry. Anger, more often than not, is a mask for pain or fear. If you respond with more anger, it becomes a firestorm. But if you absorb it with grace, you can turn the tide. Let's say someone shouts, "This is ridiculous. I'm sick of being treated like I don't matter." Responding with logic won't work. But this might. Yes, I can feel how much this matters to you, and you have every right to speak up. But if we're going to fix this, we need to slow down and work through it together. You're giving space to the explosion, but you're also building a path back to stability. What makes this technique so human is that it doesn't require perfection, just presence. You don't have to solve everything in one sentence. You just have to keep the door open. Every yes, but is a choice. Do I defend or do I deepen the connection? There will be times when people say things that are hard to hear. Accusations, misinterpretations, unfair critiques. In those moments, it's tempting to shut down. But remember, behind every emotional outburst is a need. Sometimes it's the need to feel seen. Sometimes it's the need to feel safe. If you can meet that need, even briefly, you shift the entire energy of the negotiation. Here's one final example. Two friends in conflict. Friend A, I feel like you've forgotten me. We used to talk every week, and now I don't hear from you at all. Friend B, yes, I've been distant, and that's on me. I've had a lot going on, but I should have reached out. But but I value this friendship more than I've shown, and I don't want to lose it. That's not weakness. That's strength, the kind that rebuilds bridges. The truth is, emotional negotiations aren't about winning. They're about healing. And yes, but becomes a tool for honesty, humility, and hope. Chapter 8. By now, you've learned how to yes, but technique can be a masterful tool for negotiation, building bridges, defusing tension, and guiding conversations toward meaningful outcomes. But there's a catch. Any tool powerful enough to persuade can also be used to manipulate. And that's why, as a skilled negotiator, you must not only know how to use yes, but you must also know how to defend against it. Let's begin with the subtle version. Imagine you're in a meeting. You present a thoughtful idea that you've spent days preparing. Your colleague responds, "Yes, that's a creative approach, but we don't have time to experiment right now." Sounds polite, even flattering. But what actually happened? Your idea was acknowledged, then dismissed, and worse, the dismissal was wrapped in a compliment, which makes it harder to push back without seeming overly defensive. This is a manipulative version of yes, but agreement as a cushion, rejection as the outcome. Recognizing it is the first line of defense. When someone uses yes, but to redirect, diminish, or disarm your input, you need to pay attention not just to what they're saying, but what they're avoiding. Let's break it down. There are several yes, but traps you should learn to spot. The compliment trap. Yes, you've done a great job, but this just isn't the direction we're going. This frames dismissal as praise. The goal is to make you accept the no without protest. To counter it, reaffirm the compliment, then bring the focus back. "Thank you. I appreciate that. Just so I understand what specifically about the direction concerns you." The logic deflection. Yes, that's true, but it's not relevant right now. Here, the speaker shifts the frame, often to avoid engaging with your point. Your move? Reconnect their logic to the main issue. I believe it's relevant because it impacts the timeline we're discussing. Can we explore that? The authority shield. Yes, I agree with you, but the higher-ups won't go for it. This one removes responsibility from the speaker and assigns it to an invisible force. Your counter? Ask for specificity. What exactly do you think their concerns would be? Maybe we can prepare something to address them. In each case, the point is not to fight, but to uncover. The more you reveal about the underlying resistance, the more power you regain. Another version of yes, but manipulation is when it's used to appear collaborative while covertly steering things their way. You might hear, "Yes, we should include your department, but let's handle that in phase 2. Translation, you're not getting included, but I want you to feel like you are. To challenge this, stay curious, not combative. Phase 2 sounds reasonable. Can you walk me through how that would impact the timeline and resource sharing? I want to be sure our priorities align." You're not calling them out. You're drawing them out. That's how you shift the power. There's also a form of toxic, yes, but that shows up in personal conversations, especially from people who try to control through passive aggression. For example, "Yes, you can go out with your friends, but I guess I'll just stay home." Again, this is a negotiation. It's guilt disguised as permission. In these moments, it's important to name what's happening without escalating. Try. "It sounds like you're not okay with this plan. Let's talk about what's really bothering you." What you're doing here is refusing the bait. You're taking the conversation out of the shadows and into the light. A more refined manipulator might say, "Yes, I totally support your goals, but don't you think you're aiming a little high right now?" Here, they mask discouragement as concern. You may be tempted to second-guess yourself, but don't. Respond with clarity. "I appreciate your concern, and I am aiming high." That's intentional. Let's talk about what success would look like in this case. You've heard the phrase death by a thousand cuts. Manipulative, yes, but is often just that small, seemingly polite rejections that accumulate into self-doubt. The defense isn't aggression. It's precision. Name, clarify, redirect. It's also important to pay attention to tone and pattern. If someone always leads with yes but consistently undermines, delays, or diminishes your ideas, then the words are camouflage. You're not negotiating. You're being managed. At that point, it may be time to switch strategies. Instead of responding directly to the yes, but you zoom out. You say something like, I've noticed a pattern where our ideas are acknowledged but rarely move forward. What would it take to get real commitment on this? That puts the entire process on the table. And often, that's where the real negotiation begins. Sometimes, though, you may need to set boundaries. Not every manipulative, yes, but is fixable. If someone is using it to gaslight, to erode your confidence, or to maintain control, then the response is not a better argument. It's distance. Remember, negotiation is not always about getting to yes. Sometimes it's about recognizing when yes is being used to avoid truth. Chapter 9. While the yes, but technique is a powerful way to steer conversations, there's a companion method that's just as important, especially when your goal isn't to win, but to build. That method is yes and. If yes, but is a steering wheel, yes and is a bridge. It doesn't redirect. It expands. It says, I hear you, and let's build on it. In negotiations where collaboration is key, yes and fosters momentum, trust, and creativity. The magic lies in its simplicity. It creates space, not resistance. Let's look at how it works. Imagine you're working with a team to solve a business problem. One colleague suggests launching a new product line. Another says it's too risky. In traditional meetings, this could turn into a debate. But someone steps in and says, yes, launching something new is bold, and we can explore a limited beta test to manage the risk. No contradiction, no conflict, just momentum. In contrast, if the reply had been, yes, launching something new is bold, but it's too risky, the conversation would likely stall. Risk becomes a wall. With yes and, risk becomes a factor to integrate. This technique originates in improvisational theater. In improv, performers are trained to never block an idea. If one actor says, let's pretend we're on Mars, and the other says, no, we're in a kitchen, the scene dies. But if the second actor says, yes, and I just baked Martian cookies, the story grows. Negotiation is no different. When you use yes and you validate someone's input and extend it, it doesn't mean you agree with everything. It means you respect the flow. You're co-creating instead of countering. In leadership, this can be a game changer. Say a junior team member proposes a new marketing angle. You might think it needs refining, but if you say, yes, and we could pair that with a social campaign, you validate their contribution while guiding it forward. They feel seen, and you keep control of direction. Intense conversations, yes, and can also reduce defensiveness. Imagine a client says, we're not happy with the current results. You could reply, yes, but we warned you about the timeline, which is defensive. Or you could say, yes, and we understand how important this is. Let's walk through what's working and where we can adjust. Now you've turned tension into teamwork. That said, yes, and is not a replacement for yes, but. It's a tool for a different context. Use yes, and when you want to build consensus, encourage creativity, strengthen relationships, move forward without resistance. Use yes, but when you need to, set boundaries, refocus a conversation, introduce a condition or correction, push back with tact. Knowing when to use each is the mark of a seasoned communicator. There's also a time when yes and can soften a tough conversation. Let's say you need to give critical feedback, starting with yes, but might cause someone to brace themselves. Instead, try, yes, you put in a lot of effort, and there are some areas where we can still grow. The feedback still lands, but in a way that keeps the door open. In negotiation with peers or equals, yes, and is especially powerful. It helps preserve status, which is often a silent undercurrent in negotiation. No one wants to feel dismissed. Yes, and offers a way to contribute without competing. Here's a real-world scenario. Two departments are fighting over budget. Department A wants more money for hiring. Department B wants more for equipment. Instead of saying, yes, but our needs are greater, one side says, yes, and we both have essential needs. Let's map out priorities for this quarter, then revisit phase 2 allocations. No one loses face. The conversation keeps moving. In diplomacy and politics, yes, and is a way to forge alliances. It allows different sides to acknowledge each other's concerns and still find a path forward. In personal relationships, it's a way to say, I see your perspective and I want to grow with you. Let's be clear. Yes, and doesn't mean rolling over. It doesn't mean agreeing with everything. It simply means acknowledging and advancing rather than acknowledging and opposing. In fact, some of the best negotiators blend yes, but, and yes, and seamlessly. They start with yes, and to build rapport, then switch to yes, but when direction needs to be asserted. For example, yes, and your input has been invaluable, but given the deadline, we'll need to move forward with the current plan. The shift feels earned, not imposed. To master negotiation, you must treat language like a toolkit. Every word you choose builds a frame. Yes, but is your sculpting tool. Yes, and is your foundation. When you use both with intention, you control not just the outcome, but the emotional tone of the room. Chapter 10. Every negotiation tells a story. It begins with a question or a challenge. Someone wants something. It evolves through tension, misunderstanding, posturing, and progress. And if done well, it ends with something more than agreement. Mutual respect, clarity, and a shared sense of achievement. Throughout this book, we've walked through one of the most underrated, deceptively simple tools in that process. The yes, but technique. It's not flashy. It doesn't come with legalese or charts. But when used skillfully, it can quietly reshape the course of any conversation. At its heart, it's about honoring another person's perspective without surrendering your own. Yes acknowledges, but redirects. Let's revisit what makes it powerful. You learn that yes, but gives you a way to disarm resistance. Instead of pushing back directly and sparking a fight or flight response, you validate the other party's input, then offer a pivot. You say, I hear you, and here's why I still need this. You saw how it serves to reclaim control in high-stakes conversations. Whether you're negotiating a salary, a contract, a timeline, or even just whose turn it is to do the dishes. Yes, but lets you steer without bulldozing. It's assertiveness wrapped in politeness. You explored how to use it in sales, leadership, relationships, and conflict resolution. You learned to identify when others are using against you, and how to peel back the layers to find what's really being said. You discovered how to defend against manipulation and guilt-wrapped objections. Then you met its softer sibling. Yes, and a tool of creation, not correction. One that helps people feel included, ideas feel alive, and progress feels shared. When the moment calls for building rather than bargaining. Yes, and becomes your best ally. What ties it all together is this. Negotiation isn't just a skill. It's a human art. It's the ability to hear someone fully and still guide the moment toward your goal. But here's the truth most books won't tell you. Winning a negotiation doesn't always mean getting everything you wanted. Sometimes it means getting just enough without burning bridges. Sometimes it means walking away, but with your dignity intact. Sometimes it means helping the other person feel like they've won. Even if you shape the entire outcome, the best negotiators know this. They aren't just clever with words. They're emotionally intelligent. They know when to lean in with yes and when to pivot with yes, but they listen not to respond, but to understand the terrain. They speak with direction, but never with disdain. In a world where attention is short and egos are fragile, the smallest linguistic tools can make the biggest impact. So here's your invitation. Start noticing. Listen closely to the yes but phrases around you. Watch how people try to redirect conversations while seeming agreeable. Study when it works and when it backfires. Then start using it intentionally, not as a trick, not as a gimmick, but as a way to negotiate like a human who respects nuance and seeks outcomes at last. Practice with friends. Use it in meetings. Apply it in family discussions. Each time, you'll sharpen your instincts. You'll feel how tone, timing, and context matter. You'll mess up sometimes, but even that's part of the learning. And over time, you'll realize something. It's not just about saying yes, but it's about becoming the kind of person who can lead others without forcing them, guide them without silencing them, persuade them without making them feel defeated. That's how negotiators win. Not with louder voices, but with better conversations.